This is week 5 in my series of audio diaries recording my birding during lockdown, covering the period Tuesday the 2nd to Monday the 8th of February 2021. In this series, I share the daily entries in my bird journal, telling you about the bird species I've seen, behaviours I've observed, and changes I'm noticing as the year progresses, all from the extremely local viewpoint of my garden and neighbourhood in Hampshire, England. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast. I'm Suzy Buttress. As a casual birder, I take time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. In my show, I'll tell you about the wild birds I've seen, speak with other enthusiasts, take bird walks, and share stories from listeners around the world. In case you missed it, last episode, in honour of International Women's Day, I revisited conversations I've had with awesome women birders. My guests ranged from professional biologists to those who simply enjoy the birds they see in their backyards. They each tell me how birds have touched their lives. Do take a listen. This episode is brought to you by Casual Birder Weekly, the show's newsletter. I connect with you in so many places, the show's Facebook group, Instagram and on Twitter, and it can mean that our contact is a bit fragmented. The newsletter is a great way for us all to stay in touch. Each week I share tips to help you get the best birding experiences, bird news that's caught my eye, recommendations for other podcasts or books I've enjoyed, and I let you know about any planned group birdwatch events. And we have 2 that are planned for the next couple of months, one in April and one in May. The link is in the episode notes. And now to my audio diary, covering the period Tuesday the 2nd to Monday the 8th of February 2021. Continuing my weekly lockdown birdwatching diaries, this is week 5. I'm currently standing, looking out of my bedroom window at my garden. It's late afternoon and there's 3 wood pigeons waiting to come into the garden, I think, for their final feed before the end of the day. It's been very cold and I've refreshed all of the bird baths with fresh water, but I had to take out enormous discs of ice that in a couple of them were over 2 inches thick. So I've got 3 bird baths that are full of fresh water now around the garden of differing depths and sizes. The smallest one is just a plant saucer, and the smaller birds like that, but it's actually, I can see from here, got ice in again. It's frustrating. I have a large plant saucer that's probably about 3 inches deep, and there's currently a blackbird bathing in that one with a dunnock hopping around the outside, I think hoping to get in and have a bath too. It's definitely been an afternoon of bathing for the birds. Considering it's been so cold, I can't believe they want to bathe, but it's necessary to keep their feathers in order. So Tuesday the 2nd of February was a mild day, damp, bit nondescript, reasonable number of birds that I saw for the bird watch, but I only had 5 species that I saw in the garden that day: 2 blackbirds, 1 house sparrow, a robin, 2 jackdaws and a rook. But I did hear long-tailed tits, and I heard the red-leg partridge calling out. I didn't spend much time looking out of the window that day because that evening I was delighted to be giving a talk to Birdwatch Island South Dublin branch about the joy of casual birding. I really enjoyed giving the talk. 75 people watched and I got some lovely comments back about the content. I spoke about the wonderful day's birding that I had in Cabo Pulmo in Mexico and talked about the different birds that I saw during that day. that day I recorded an episode from that garden. So if you want to hear the sounds and me describing the birds that turned up in the garden in Cabo Pulmo, that's the episode to listen to. Oops. A rook and a wood pigeon almost collided over the garden just then as they both took off at the same time. That's a bit awkward. Anyway, yes, that was lovely giving that talk, and I hope to do more. So if anyone knows of any opportunities for me to speak about the joy of casual birding, do let me know. The good thing about being able to do the talks virtually is that people can join from all over the world. Wednesday the 3rd, it was damp but sunny and mild, and a big piece of news for the garden was that I spotted a robin collecting leaves and then taking it into the ivy. So we've never had a robin's nest in the garden as far as I know, and this was extremely exciting. It was the first sign of seeing a bird collecting nesting material that I'd had this year, and to have it collecting leaves and taking it into our ivy was really exciting. The drawback is that that's an area of the garden that we were planning to develop this year, so I might, if it does have a nest in there, I don't want to disturb it, so that might put our plans on hold a little bit. I also saw a blackbird displaying on the lawn. It was sort of crouching down and bowing its head and then splaying its tail and walking in an odd way, but definitely displaying. But there wasn't another bird there, so I don't know whether it was practising or whether there was a bird and I just couldn't see it. Oh, a carrion crow was eating peanuts that morning as well, so noisily that it got me out of bed to go and have a look and see what the banging was. And while I was doing my bird watch, the red kite flew over quite low, and then as it flew over a second time, I saw it was holding something, and I managed to get the binoculars on it. I couldn't see what it was eating, but it was holding something in its talons and eating on the wing. So it had picked up some food from somewhere, but I don't know what it was. It's the first time I've ever seen a red kite eating while flying. Well, seen a red kite eating, full stop. Had a good number of birds in the garden that day. 9 species in the garden. The usual suspects: robin, blue tit, house sparrow, blackbird, carrion crow, red-legged partridge, wood pigeon, jackdaw, magpie. And then flying over, I had starling and red kite. Still haven't seen a starling in the garden, but they have flown over a few times. Oh, I don't believe it. I refreshed. I've got a small plant dish, a large plant dish, and a pedestal bird bath, all with fresh water in. And then we've got our water feature, which the birds do use because it's big and wide and deep, but it's totally frozen at the moment. And the wood pigeons are skating on it, trying to find the tiniest drop of fresh water. It's frozen. I've got 3 other baths in the garden where they can get fresh water. Oh, honestly, I feel like I want to go out there and just pick it up and say, look, this is where the water is. Thursday the 4th, another damp, overcast day, but a large number of birds in the garden again. So it seems like the mild, damp days are fine. The birds will come in and use the garden a lot more. On that day, the crow was back in, eating the nuts that I'd put out on the bird table, and the robin was regularly taking suet from the suet feeder. It was nice to see the blue tit doing that as well, and actually the house sparrow stopped by. So that little cheap feeder, which isn't going to last long because it isn't very well made, but it's got nice big ports to allow easy access to the suet and peanuts. It actually is attracting quite a lot of birds to it. It's a shame. I've been looking online to see if I can find another feeder with similar large ports, but I've not had much luck. The rook came down again to eat suet from the cage. I've got a square block of suet in a cage, and the rook came to eat some of that. And we had a large number of birds around, including song thrush that I could hear, redwing that flew over, and saw that through the binoculars. It flew through, and I thought it looked thrush-like, and it landed in the tree across the way, and then I used my binoculars to double check. Red kite was flying over. I saw jackdaw and magpie. But in the garden we just had carrion crow, blackbird, blue tit, robin, 5 wood pigeons and a rook. Friday the 5th was a sunny morning. There was a little bit of cloud around and it was quite chill in the air. Did my bird watch quite late that day. I did it 9:15. Usual suspects in the garden again. And about 3 goldfinch flew over. So that was good. And I saw 2 herring gull as well. So a bit of variety in the birds I was seeing. I'd love the goldfinches to start coming back regularly. They've been in a few times, but they get scared very easily with the bigger birds. So it's best if they come when it's quiet. I think I've heard a bullfinch in the area as well recently, but I've not seen it. Saturday, the 6th of February, was a frosty morning, very cold, and there was a beautiful crescent moon in the sky that was lit by the sun coming up. So that was really nice to see in the sort of pale blue sky. It seemed to be fairly lively in the garden that day. What was nice was that I saw the blue tit checking out the nest box that's got the camera. The rook was in the garden that morning as well, and because it was so cold, it was sitting on the back fence chattering, and I could see the breath coming out of it for each chatter. I tried to photograph it, but I just couldn't. I've seen a photograph recently of a blue tit singing, and coils of the condensation in the air visible from the song. And I was hoping to get something similar, but, mine was just against a backdrop of someone's rubbish bins and garage, and I couldn't quite catch the expelled air in the photograph. But anyway, I saw it, so I could wonder at it even if I couldn't capture it on film or on digital. The rook also came into the garden a bit later on and spent ages deciding whether to come down into the garden. There's plenty of food around in the trays, but it spent a good 5 minutes sitting on the cherry tree deciding whether to actually land, and it was watching all around, and it kept leaning forward as though it was going to jump onto the ground, but then didn't, and then it hopped around a few branches and then came back, and it looked so worried. It was making me wonder whether there was a cat or something under the shrub, or maybe a sparrowhawk in the air. There was just something, it just felt like it was really on alert and not comfortable at all. And it eventually, after 5 minutes of this, will it, won't it, come and get some food, it eventually dropped to the ground and grabbed a frozen apple core that was out before flying off with it. And there was so much like suet and nice to eat food. It took a frozen apple core, but they know what they're doing. On that day, I decided to go out to the front of the house, which was where the sunlight was shining, because nothing much was happening in the garden in the afternoon. It was cold, and I could hear birds' song in the neighbourhood, but nothing much in the garden. So I went out to the front of our house and managed to see a flock of long-tailed tits and some goldfinches. And the goldfinch came and landed in the tree quite close to me. So I was able to get a little bit of video of it singing away, and it was really lovely. It was singing out and then doing its thing where it sort of flashes its wings side by side. The only drawback was I was looking at it from below, so I couldn't really see the yellow of the wings. But it was still lovely to see it starting its display song. And I also spent some time photographing the red-legged partridge in the garden. So on the previous Thursday, I'd spent the evening watching a webinar by Faraz Abdul in Trinidad and Tobago. He was doing a workshop about photographing birds and understanding light, and showing us some of his amazing photographs and giving us tips on how to take better bird photographs. So on that day, I decided the lighting was lovely. There were a few birds around. I would practice, because I really do need to practice with my camera. And so I spent some time taking photographs of the red-legged partridge, tried different settings on my camera, tried to understand how to control for the light, because it's always at the time when you want to take a key photograph. Oh my goodness, there's a big massive flock of rooks and jackdaws, and it must be, I don't know, about 70 or 80 birds. Really big flock just suddenly rose up in the distance. Gosh, don't think I've seen them do that over here before. I've seen them fly over on their commute, and there's been a lot of birds, but not. They must have all been disturbed by something and just all gone up into the air. But yeah, so I was trying out all these different settings, and I'm going to continue practicing, trying to remember things like, where's the light coming from, how intense it is, what settings I need to change on my camera to account for those, and also to be thinking in terms of creating art from my photos. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Just taking a decent photograph would be an improvement. There's some late afternoon sun coming through right now, and there's some rooks flying very high. Oh no. So the birds that are up flying high now are it's a mixture of gulls and jackdaws, I think. But there's definitely gulls. They might fly this way, so we might hear them. So there's 10 gulls. I think they're herring gulls. So yes, I was practising on the red leg partridge that was sitting just by the hedgehog box. It seemed like it was in a nice warm patch of sunlight, and it was just sitting there and enjoying the sun. So that was quite a nice afternoon. It was warm outside, or warm when I was in the sunlight. It wasn't so warm when the sun went behind the house. I got my camera out and was practising, so that's all good. So it's getting late afternoon here, and I've currently got jackdaw in the garden on the cherry tree and 3 wood pigeons eating the last of the seed that's out. I won't be putting any more out tonight. The next lot will go out tomorrow. Blackbird seemed to be disturbed by something. He's on alert. He's got his tail cocked and his wings dropped. He keeps flicking his tail, so he's obviously upset by something. Sunday the 7th of February, it was overcast and cold. One of the blackbirds, there's 2 male blackbirds in the garden right now. So the one that's up on the fence I was just about to tell you about, because on Sunday I noticed that it had been injured in some way. It's fine, but it had its left foot seemed like it was favouring it. It wasn't putting it down properly. And it also had feathers on its back that were all scuffed up and looked like it had been, some of the feathers had been removed or pulled. So it was looking a bit beaten up. So I wondered if it had been fighting with another blackbird. And having just seen it being on alert with this other one that's in the garden, I think perhaps there's some territorial disputes going on between these 2 male blackbirds. Oh, during my bird watch, because it was a little bit windy, someone's gate slammed, and that scared off everything. Only the red-leg partridge stayed in the garden, hunkered down by the side of the greenhouse, and all the other birds left. And because they'd been frightened out of the garden, it took absolutely ages to come back, so didn't have a particularly large number of species for my bird watch that day. I saw the jackdaw again that's got the bad right foot. Got a bit of a theme going on with birds having bad feet, or feet that they can't use properly. But yeah, that jackdaw has been coming regularly, and it seems to be able to manage okay with flying and perching, even though it's only using 1 foot, and eating. So it's surviving, so that's good. And I saw the dunnock getting sunflower hearts out of the feeder that day as well. That wood pigeon is back on the... wish he'd go to the proper water. Oh, he's been chased off by another. So we've got 6 wood pigeon in the garden right now, and they're starting to fight over the food. There's plenty of food around. I wish they would just not be so aggressive. Oh, turns out it's this one bird. He's just chasing every other bird out the garden. Oh, and then he saw me looking out the window, so he got scared. There's always someone bigger. On Monday, I had to change to a new book because I'd used up all of the pages in my first year's bird journal. It's not bad, is it? On Monday the 8th, it was very cold. It was a light wind, and it was snowing through my garden bird watch. So I put fresh food out at 7:30 and did my bird watch from 7:45. The blackbird with all the plumage ruffles was back in the garden eating, so it seems to be okay. Oh, I saw a sparrowhawk doing a display flight, just flying in a big circle, just round and round. So that was interesting, because I remember seeing that last year with a pair of them, and I guess maybe display flights are starting up. Anyway, it was reasonably high up, and the birds didn't seem to be that bothered about it in the garden, so I think maybe they knew it wasn't hunting at the time. And there were 2 red kites out flying around as well. I don't often see 2 together, I often see 1, so it's quite nice to see the 2 of them. So I don't know if that's the breeding pair from last year. The blackbird was eating an apple core in the garden that I'd thrown out, and the red leg partridge noticed it and went over and had a few pecks as well, sort of chased off the blackbird and then ate some of the apple itself. And the carrion crow was back, eating the nuts on the table as well. So that was quite a good day. I actually had 11 species in the garden on Monday. Blackbird, wood pigeon, 11 of them at one time. 2 blackbird, 2 robin, a blue tit, a magpie, a rook, 2 red kite, a house sparrow, a herring gull flew over. The red-legged partridge was in the garden. Carrion crow, dunnock and jackdaw were all in the garden as well. So nice sort of collection of species there. Personal recommendation is a powerful way to help others find the show. If you enjoy what you hear, please tell a friend or give the show a shout out on social media. You can also help support the show's production by contributing to the show's tip jar, and the easiest way to do this is to buy me a virtual coffee. Your donations help fund my production costs and are very much appreciated. You'll find the link in the episode notes. Do keep in touch. Tell me about your sightings by leaving me a message on SpeakPipe or on the contact form on my website, casualbirder.com. And sign up for my newsletter, Casual Birder Weekly. Take a look at the episode notes for the links to these. Make sure you don't miss any episodes by following the show wherever you listen. Thank you to Randy Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeve Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder podcast.